So I began reading The Way of Kings and I thought, wow, this is a nice prologue. But it turns out that wasn't a prologue, that was a prelude. And now what I'm going to talk about is a prologue. And then after the prologue, there's a flashback. And that's how you know Brandon Sanderson is setting up something huge with this world. Not only by the thickness of the book and the knowledge that the series is going to be 10 books, but there's 3 prologues. So let's talk about the second one. So at the start of this prologue, the real prologue, not the prelude, we get a snippet at the top. And the snippet at the top is saying, it's like a quotation, and then underneath it says, this was said on this year by this person 31 seconds from death. I think it was 31 seconds. And to me, it would seem like someone's doing an experiment. And it's specifically mentioned that there's 1,000 days until the Everstorm. The way I understood it was the Everstorm was kind of like that final battle that we saw in the Prelude. So it's like a backtracking log of people doing experiments. And my first initial thought was they're trying to capture like the final thought, or almost like they're trying to see a vision or waiting for someone to reveal something before they die. So in my head, they're killing everybody. They've discovered what happened in the Prelude, and they know that when the Everstorm comes, we're gonna need the 10 champions, right? Because they're the ones who fight off the enemy, but they know 9 of them are still alive. So they're killing everybody and hoping that they get, and maybe there's meant to be like a vision from those people. Maybe you get like a vision from them before they die that gives you a clue that that was one of the 9 Oathbreakers, because we need to kill those 9 Oathbreakers to send them back so that they can be kind of reborn to battle in the final storm, in the Everstorm, otherwise everybody dies. That was my first thought. And I did read this prologue twice and I only thought of it on the second time round, but I think that's a really good guess. So we join Szeth, I'm gonna go with Szeth, and he is truthless, and it is a signing of a treaty between the Parshendi and the Alethi, and he is there to do murder. And again, I read this prologue twice to try and soak up the details, because I know Sanderson is so detailed, he loves to foreshadow, and I was just excited. It was only about 15 pages, so I wanted to reread it before doing the video. And it very specifically mentions his 3 heirs by name. So although they're not heavily involved during this prologue at all, really, they're just mentioned, obviously they're going to be extremely important moving forward based on what happens to their father. So it's nice to get like a glimpse of these people who are probably going to be extremely important in this book and beyond it as well. But the heir in particular, the most important, you would say, of his 3 children, was speaking with 2 men who were either from Azish or were Azish. I don't know if that's the name of their race and people or the name of their homeland. And one of them had a strange white patch on either his cheek or forehead. That's a really weird thing for someone to mention. They're whispering away and one of them's looking over their shoulder. So his heir is finding out something important or treacherous, or I don't know, but something along those lines. That information is going to be important, and you can believe I'm going to be looking out for that guy with the white mark on his cheek or face for the duration of this book and beyond, to see if I'm right on that. One of the first things to note is that Szeth, someone's definitely going to correct me on that name, and that's fine because I'm interested to hear how you're meant to say it. Szeth thinks it's weird that the Parshendi want to break the alliance when they're literally just signing for it today as well. So that's an interesting thing to notate right there, that he also thinks it's a bit fishy, which goes to show that maybe that's not actually who wants to break it, if the assassin thinks it's fishy as well. And we notice as he's sneaking through all the halls to go and find the king, he notices the 10, I don't know if he calls them prophets, the 10 deities, I can't remember what the word is, but the 10 gods. And I can only assume those 10 gods are the 10, oath takers from the Prelude. And he notices that one of them is missing, but he also says that Gavilar, I think his name was the king, is very devout in his worship and in his faith. And if that's his faith, why would he have one missing? Maybe he already knows about what happened all those years ago and what they did to town, and that's why one of the gods is missing for some reason. And I feel like that would kind of back up my thoughts on the heading, you know, because maybe it's his people, maybe it's the Alethi who's doing the murders to try and send the 9 other Oathbreakers back to be prepped for the battle of the Everstorm. And I know I'm reaching here and I'm going after this one thought, when really I should keep a very open mind because it's right at the start of the book, but I just think it's a good thought and a good guess. But I might be miles off. There might be another reason why one of the gods isn't in there. Szeth does a lot of thinking to himself, as all characters do. You get like an insight into his world and who he is. Obviously I don't know who he is, but he mentions Voidbringers and he says something really interesting. So when he's thinking about, do Voidbringers exist? And he says this, he says, his punishment, talking about himself, his punishment declares that they didn't, but his honor that they did. So that's really confusing. So what that could mean is, initially I thought maybe that meant he was one of the initial 9, because there is no punishment for him for renegating on his deal. He's still alive, he has a ton of cool powers, but his honor says that the Voidbringers must come. But then I don't know if that even makes sense as well. But I feel like if I spent a long time thinking about this, maybe I could come up with a good answer. But I know that that's going to be extremely important. It's just like Sanderson to leave like a very direct and obvious yet cryptic clue right at the beginning as to, you know, who Szeth is and why he's so important. And yet I don't have enough information to unlock it. Well, I think I don't anyway. And we get Lashings. Lashings are awesome. So they are obviously from somebody who can control Stormlight, I think it is. And they're great. There seems to be 3 layers of them. We get like a little bit of an info dump. It's kind of like at the beginning of Mistborn when he's using his powers, but we're getting it described at the same time as well. I think this is done more smoothly than that because there's less to learn. There's just basically 3 lashings and that's it, and you learn a bit about how they interact with the world. And it seems to be either like gravity based or kind of magnetic force based. I don't think it's as simplistic as that, but that was like my first impression. And although we get a very cool scene where the king has his armor on, what's it called? Not storm armor. I've already forgotten what the armor's called. Shard armor. Shard plate? Shard plate. And he also has a shard blade as well. And we get to see 2 different things. So it's a great device for explaining a bit about the world. So we see someone in shard plate and we learn a bit about how they work, and you know, they can move quickly, they can absorb blows, and they're powered by these gems underneath, and it can't be cut by a shard blade. And there's, you know, there's a lot, and I'm sure that we'd get even more if we had it from the king's perspective. But then we also get the trade-off, because you can't wear the shard plate and then also do the lashings. But I think a battle between 2 people who have chosen to have the ability to use lashings rather than shard plate would be pretty incredible, and I'm 100% certain we're going to get that later on. But on the other hand, Szeth does say that his ability with Stormlight and Lashings hasn't been seen for over a millennia, which then again makes me think, well, if it's not been seen for over a millennia, how is this dude just bopping about with it? Unless he's town, like reborn, but like a millennia ago. But I don't think he would be able to be reborn without the other ones put back there. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe this guy's just like really talented with Stormlight. I'm not sure, but I will find out as we read on, which is the beauty of these types of books. And after a hard fought battle, Szeth wins, and he wins in a really cool way, using his gravitational / magnetic use of lashings. And Gavilar, the king, I think I'm saying his name right, Gavilar, he basically runs for a list of names of people he thinks were trying to kill him, which I think is going to be really useful going forwards politically, to try and get an idea of how the politics is going to move, although I've been told it's very complicated in this book. And it turns out that when Szeth tells him it was the Par Shendi, he says that doesn't make sense at all, and Szeth thinks it doesn't make sense at all, and they literally just signed the treaty that night. So, you know, there's a lot more going on here. His shard blade becomes up for grabs. He tells Szeth to tell his brother to find the words. What does he say? Find the most important words a man can say. I don't know what they are at all. Couldn't even hazard a guess right now. But he also gives up this sphere with like dark light inside of it, if I remember correctly. That's obviously going to be extremely important, and Szeth holds on to that. What is it? I have no idea. Could it possibly be related to the swords? No, I think I'm just connecting those two because they're the only like super mythical thing. Obviously the shard blades are important, but I mean the swords that were left behind by the 10 oath takers and then the 9 oath breakers. So yeah, I have no idea what that is and where that could go, but interesting. Overall, awesome prologue. We get some politics, we get some teasing, we get an info dump, we get a fantastic battle to the death, and we have the events that are going to set off the worlds. I am wholly certain that Gavilar's death, puts into motion some huge wars based on the fact that at the start of the next prologue, there's another prologue, or a flashback I should say, says that's 5 years into the future. So I would guess that the fallout from this is humongous, and I can't wait to jump into it.